Hey everyone, this is Jared. Jared here, back with another video. So this time I want to look at a game that was played, which a lot of people would definitely take away a good amount from this game here. This is played between the current World Chess Champion GUKESH and the former World Chess Champion / current World #1 Magnus Carlsen. I'm sure most of you know who Magnus Carlsen is if you followed chess. He was the world champion. He was a 5-time world champion and defeated Vishy Anand twice. He defeated Karyakin once, Caruana once, and Nepo once. Was supposed to defend his title in 2023, but in 2022 he stated he would not due to lack of motivation. So nevertheless, after a couple of years and a couple of championships later, that's how GUKESH became the world champion by defeating the other world champion that took place between CARLSEN and GUKESH, which was Ding Liren. But anyway, this was a game between GUKESH and Magnus Carlsen, when Magnus Carlsen was still world champion and GUKESH was, I don't remember his exact ranking at the time, but certainly he was not world champion. He didn't even win the candidates. I think before 2024, he was not even in the top 10, I don't believe. But anyway, this is a game from the AIM Chess Meltwater, champions in 2022. This was a rapid game. GUKESH has white and Magnus Carlsen has black. Let's jump into it. All right, so opening-wise, we have a French defense. One of my favorite openings as white and black. D4, D5, we have the classical, knight C3. Knight F6 devotes the classical variation. Knight C3 devotes the main line. I'm sorry, and Knight F6 is classical. E5, Knight F to D7. Now, if you want me to do more videos on the French defense itself, specifically this variation, the classical variation, I'll cover that in another video, but I really just want to go over the game here. C5, Knight to F3, Knight C6, Bishop E3, okay, all this is standard, Queen D2, B5, D takes. A little bit of an interesting move. Usually the main line is either A3 or even Knight D1, but okay, D takes, still a playable line. Bishop takes, Knight takes, and Bishop D3. Basically saying, yeah, you can go ahead and take my bishop here, I don't mind, and you can press forward with B4, and then after knight backs wherever, A5, and then game continues. That's possibly what I would have done as Magnus, but again, you know, Magnus is Magnus. Queen B6, Queen F2, B4, Knight E2, A5, castles, Bishop A6, and now F5, a really good move by GUKESH, trying to break apart the center. Remember, the black king is still in the center of the board. It's not castled yet. So this is a very good move, trying to break apart the center of the board. So let's see how what GUKESH follows with. Okay. After pawn takes, Knight F4. That's a very good move. Not even caring about that pawn on F5. He wants to get that pawn on D5 and create some tactics against the queen, create some tactics against the king if it doesn't castle. Knight E7, trying to defend. D5. And now, again, just another move, keeping with the attack, not letting Magnus Carlsen off the hook, which is good. If you want to win against Magnus Carlsen, you need to get a serious advantage out of the opening, and you need to create tactics in the middle game. You go to an endgame against Carlsen, and you're not just, like, all of a sudden winning. You're not going to win the game. So after E6, F6 was played. Rook A to C1. And castles. Castles, he's like, all right, my king's in trouble. I know he's coming to the attack. I got a castle already. C3. Interesting move. Now, the knight on C5 cannot just take the bishop on D3 because the queen on B6 would hang. So the queen's got to move out of the way first. Then we trade bishops. Rook takes, pawn takes, and knight E4. That knight's got to move because it realized it was under attack. All right, queen E3. Pawn takes. Now knight D4. Basically trying to keep that pawn on E6 as much as possible. And also trying to get the knight towards the center too. One thing to go over is knights do better when they're in the center of the board. They also do better when they're connected and protected by something, but definitely when they're in the center of the board, they do very well. So that's why you want to make sure that knight gets to the center of the board. But okay, anyway. So after rook takes a2, we have knight to b5 here. Queen e5, just trying to get counterplay here. Rook c7, saying, yeah, I get what you're doing, but I want to go ahead and attack you even further. The rook on c7 is protected by the knight on b5, and the pawn on e6 is protected by the knight on f4. Everything is glued together. Although the knight on b5 definitely looks a little bit vulnerable. So GUKESH just got to make sure that CARLSEN can't attack it. Rook defends here. Okay, now queen b6, just throwing everything, keeping with the attack, keeping with the strategy, and this is good. If you want to win against CARLSEN, this is what you got to do. Okay, so after knight g5 here, rook takes knight, and this game only continues a few more moves, but that was the winning tactic because you can't take back because queen d8 would follow. If you took back, you would follow mate in 2, followed by queen d8 check, rook e8, and that would be mate. Again, that pawn in d6 is a monster. So CARLSEN tries to get active, but after queen c7, no such luck. Queen trade is, or it's not forced. If he did trade queens, however, you just take with the rook, and that pawn would be pushing through, or you would just go up 2 pieces, and that would obviously be game over. So he tries for counterplay, queen e3 check, king h1, and after this position, CARLSEN resigns, realizing there's nothing to do about that pawn on g7. It's going to be made in a couple of moves. You know, you might think, well, wait a minute, why don't I just, let's just say black takes rook on b2. I play rook takes g7 check, excuse me. And after king h8, how on earth are you getting that h7 pawn? The knight's protecting it well for now, but you can just play pawn h4. And attack it, and that's going to be the end of the game. Or you could even, honestly, you don't even necessarily need to do that, actually. You could even just play knight h3. And it's 3, and if the knight were to ever take, well, then obviously that's going to be mate. So, see, you might think, well, actually, you have to be careful with knight h3. I apologize. You actually do have to play h4 because I forgot that pawn e6 has to stay. So, you play pawn h4. Actually, even if you weren't to do that per se, like even if you were to just take on g7, and g7 and after king h8, you could actually just make this simple, actually, and just play knight d6 and then, you know, just advance your pawn, pass pawn. So that is the game that when GUKESH won against Magnus, I think people really started to pay attention to him as becoming definitely a world championship contender, and if not the world champion himself, which he eventually did. So anyway, that is all for today, or is all for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of it.